kind of broken the panels down into two segments today. So this is the first of two. And I wanted to kind of focus on two themes that had to do with the theme of this show, Floramatic, right? So the first of which being the use of color and contrast specifically in your work and what it means to you and what it emotes in the style of your work, because all three of you are incredibly vibrant artists, not only in the mediums that you use, but also how you are able to create layering and depth through the use of contrast and color in your work, which is a central point in the theme of the show. So I thought it'd be an important thing to touch on. So I'll be, for the sake of our crew here who's helping us with Chill and Co on transitions and helping on the back end with the live stream, I'll kind of direct the questions to you to make it a little easier, right? So you're not wondering who I'm answering the question to. So we can make it easier on the viewers at home and our team over here. But I guess I want to start with the person who's furthest away, Jenny Brown. You're joining us all the way from
I know.
For the folks who have not been checking in on my 1 million Instagram posts throughout the last month on the show, tell us a little bit about yourself, a short introduction and your style of work, please.
Sure. So I'm Jenny Brown. I am from Providence, Rhode Island, and it's where I live and work. And I guess I would call myself a mixed media artist at this point, not just a collage artist. I tend to work in a medium that's a combination of painting, drawing, and collage. I spend a lot of time sourcing materials, and that's actually almost the most fun part about it. And in sort of, you mentioned rebirth, I'm interested in the idea of giving a new story to something that's old. So resurrecting it in somehow. So a lot of these things, like these materials here, are 125 years old. So I'm bringing them back to life in a new way. They're a parallel universe, maybe. So.
Well, that's stellar. I can't wait to dive into that. That's plenty of good material.
It's pretty out there.
Yeah, no, but I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today, all the way from Rhode Island. So
thanks for having me.
Having you be a part of this, and your work is stellar, and I'm excited to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'll pass it along to Janice. So Janice Rago is a well-known Atlanta area artist. And I'll let you, Janice, kind of take it from there, because I feel like anything I would say would fall gravely short of your credentials, at least here in Atlanta. So yeah.
Hi, my name is Janice Rago. My work's kind of playful, like when it comes with colors and things like that. I like to do like contrast with a lot of it's based on, I guess, mood and how I'm feeling when I'm painting, but I like to be really playful. I'm a very process oriented artist, so I love trying out new mediums and like mixing things together. Oils are probably my main medium. I do a lot of my figures, especially in oils, and florals as well. But when it comes to like the backgrounds of my pieces, it ranges from acrylics, spray paint, rose gold leaf. So I like to throw in a lot of mediums as well to kind of like test my limits as well and kind of make my work transition into new areas, I guess. But a lot of my work centers around just, I guess I like to have the viewer create their own thoughts when they view it, and kind of have my work. I can't talk right now. I'm like nervous. I like the viewer to kind of view my work and create their own thoughts on what they think is happening within a piece.
Gotcha. Well, I will say that I've been kind of watching your work even before I opened this gallery for a number of years, and I've seen you on projects like Forward Warrior and doing not only gallery studio work, but street work as well, and seeing the way that your work has evolved. And we've had a number of pieces of yours in our gallery that work with mixed media, especially the rose gold leaf, which has been a really beautiful transition of your work. So we've got a piece up in our show called Floral Days, which uses oil, acrylic, spray paint, and rose gold leaf on a wood frame. So if you're able to log on from home and look through our virtual gallery, you'll see Janice's piece, Floral Days, on show, which is stunning. So Janice, thanks so much. And I'm really sorry if I mispronounced your last name earlier.
No, you're fine. I get it all the time.
Okay, I feel very amateur having done this. Thanks for not calling me out.
All good.
Well, thanks for joining. So I will pass it along to Carla now. So Carla, you've been doing work with us here in terms of the artist interviews and joining in throughout the week. So we mentioned earlier on an IG Live interview with you, Carla, that you have been getting a lot of press lately through Arts Atlanta, through the AJC, and so you're having a huge moment right now. So congratulations, and we're really honored to have you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So for those who didn't tune in to our awesome IG Live interview on Friday, I want to hear an introduction from yourself for those who don't know you and are not familiar with your work.
Well, so I am an international artist. I come from Ecuador. I moved here to Atlanta 4 years ago, and I've been working with themes around an exploration of the human condition within the urban environment, or in contrast of the development of the urban environment. A lot of the subject matters in my painting comes as an abstract experiential recollection of information that I gather from the urban ecosystem. So in terms of what you were talking about, color and how the color relates to my work, is basically coming from a place of observation, observing the city, observing things that can be indicators of something. So the way also that the colors, that in terms of content. But then when I interact with colors in my paintings, and in terms of composition, in terms of contrast and all that, I like to think about color as individuals that influence each other or manipulate each other in a way. So a lot of what's happening also in my painting is about balance. So, or also manipulation, how a color can manipulate others, or how a color can overtake all the tension. So that's why it is a lot of interaction. I like to think about the colors as individuals that interact with each other in the painting, like two forces that are always interacting and influencing each other.
Yeah, I love that, and I think that you had alluded to that point in a few instances, and went more into depth on that point in our Instagram Live interview on Friday, which is up, by the way, on our IG Live feed at FreeMarket Art on Instagram if you want to go check that out. But in regards to this show, first off, thank you, all three of you, for being here today. In regards to today's show, I think the reason we decided to go with the theme Floramatic, the reason why we really wanted to start introducing this idea of natural boldness into this group show, is because color means so much in nature, right? In our natural environment, we have, what we see is an end result of essentially, millennia of evolution in our natural world to introduce color in a meaningful way that signals so much more beyond just what we find as conventionally pretty or not pretty, right?
Definitely.
The adage goes that art mimics life and life mimics art. So I think that in the case of what we're talking about here with color, there is so much that we are trying to emote, that we're trying to bring to the surface through our usage of color in art, that we pull from the natural environment. And I thought Floramatic was thematically kind of right on the pulse of what I wanted this show to be and what I wanted to be talking about in terms of color and composition. So I'll start with Jenny, because of the panel here today, your work is the most, I would say, visually directly derived from this amalgam of the natural environment of flora and flowers and things like that. So you do a lot of collage work, and you blend a lot of mixed media and collage work in a way that mimics almost this transformative spiritual look into our natural environment. So let me ask you, how much of your work is meant to embellish realism and the natural environment around us, and how much of it is meant to kind of represent a truism around what the natural environment is. I guess my question really is, to what extent are you using the natural beauty that you draw inspiration from to convey or emote a certain sensibility or emotion?
Pretty close to 100%, I would say. Yeah, it's definitely the power behind why I make the choices in the materials that I find. In thinking about color, I like the idea of sort of mixing up the colors. Like if I'm saying that, you know, I have these orange roses that are on this bright blue background, which could be an ocean or a garden. It's not even just to bring an emotion to the viewer, but possibly a memory. And in this sort of like large scope of my work, which deals with time and space and matter and beginnings and endings, you know that feeling that you get when you see something and, you know, like deja vu, you think that you've seen it before. That's sort of how I feel about these. I'm hoping to provide a deja vu moment for the viewer. Maybe you will remember this from your past.
What I love about the work, especially when we actually see it in person, is that it does sort of suck you into a full body sensory environment, right? Because I think the reason why we are so drawn to the natural environment is not only because of its visual appeal, right? But because of the entire environment in which all of our senses are privy to, right? The smell, the sound of it, the feel of the air, the feel of the grass, the feel of the flower, the look of the flower, all of these things. I think you do a tremendous job in the composition of your work and your layering and your materials of conveying that emotion and bringing that to the viewer and kind of sucking the viewer in. So if you haven't seen, for the viewers at home, if you have not yet seen Janice's work, seriously, go onto our Instagram, look through the feed, look through our links in our bio and check it out. You've got 4 pieces with us.
Yes.
Right, so you've got cavernous goldenrod.
Cavernous, yeah.
Two flowering cave lanterns. And you've got orange blossom. I'm so sorry.
Oh, the orange rose. Yeah, the double life of an orange rose.
Double life of an orange rose.
So that is coming from the orange rose is actually from a book that's probably about 75, close to 100 years old. So it's this is its second life.
Cool. Okay. Well, I want to come back to that in a minute, but I do want to pass it off to Janice. So since I've known you, Janice, and I've known your work, and recently now you've been doing the series with us here at FreeMarket, I guess my first question is, what drew you to start working with certain materials like rose gold leaf? And I guess I don't want to say missing element because that's not the right word, but what specifically did you have in mind to add to your work or to modify in your existing body of work or to experiment with your work with the introduction of rose gold leaf as an element to your pieces?
I think it's just the challenge. I think I've always kind of dabbled with gold leaf. It's probably over the years, but I've never really put it together cohesively in a piece of work. And I think the challenge of getting that certain material to work right with what I was trying to do is what kind of enticed me towards it. Just like figures, like back in the day, I wouldn't paint a figure at all. I always did flowers back in college. I hated doing faces. And because it was the challenge and the fun of it, it became fun as the more it went along. And so I think with rose gold leaf, I just loved it's, obviously the hue and the colors are different than regular gold leaf and bronze leaf and stuff. And that is what was kind of enticing, but color kind of catered towards work that I've had over the years. And I think by adding a different element just kind of takes it that one step up. And especially adding it with like the figures and the florals and the patterns and stuff like that. It's just kind of fun to add a different element.
So you and I were discussing privately when you were here at the gallery the other day, just how meticulous the process of applying rose gold leaf to a canvas is as you prep the piece, because the kind of the variety of materials you use in your piece is really contingent upon your skill level and the way that you are able to apply that rose gold and get it to stick, so that every other layer that goes on, especially oil, right? Because you're doing multiple layers of oil for your faces in your pieces. That does not wear away at or adjust the outcome of the rose gold leaf. So without giving away any trade secrets, obviously, what is sort of the, you know, the level of meticulousness or detail that you need to be able to work with rose gold leaf or gold leaf in any sort of way that creates an impact? What have you learned as you've worked with this material?
Oh, it's a lot of trial and error. I think if you want to work with mixed media, you definitely need to learn like what kind of sealants, what kind of things you need to do so that whatever material you're putting on top of it doesn't cause it to change over time. Because a lot of us, we want our pieces, you know, you want it to last over the years. And, you know, with rose gold leaf or gold leaf, if you don't seal it and you paint on top of gold leaf with acrylic paints or oil paints, the chemicals in it are going to cause it to oxidize and it'll change color or damage it over time. And especially being an oil painter, you always kind of learn, like, you know, if you start with acrylics and you go to oils, you can never go back to acrylics. Or if you do oils and you use acrylics, you can't go back. So it's kind of learning just how each medium works and how you can kind of mesh them together. That's kind of exciting. But also, you know, you never really know what the final outcome will be. If you don't. I've had pieces that have warped or have over time changed colors, or it's, But once you figure that out and you kind of get it, it's pretty exciting.
So how long has it been now that you've been working with rose gold leaf? And is it something that you think you're going to incorporate or at least open the door to other similar materials going forward?
It's probably been 8 years. I think I'm using it a lot more in my pieces over the past 2 years. I've started incorporating it more, but I always kind of change as I go. I think oils have always been just the number one thing that's kind of been consistent. But I was doing resin, epoxy resin for a little while, and learning curve with that is if you have a lot of white in your paintings and you use resin, it will yellow over time. No matter what company of resin or how good that resin is, if it's in a dark room, it will darken over time. And then if you have lights on, it can slowly get lighter, but it will always yellow. And I think I've learned that with some, but it just depends. I don't know. I think that's kind of a fun part too, of just experimenting.
Well, yeah, well, the experimentation has paid off, and the work where it is right now for that series is absolutely beautiful. We're psyched to have them together. So I do want to get Carla in on this as well. And we talked at length on Friday about the use of color in there and contrast in your work. And of the three panelists today, your work is the least literal in terms of deriving from and depicting, I should say, not deriving, but depicting the natural environment as we see with Jenny and Janice's work. So briefly, for those who are not familiar with your work, and I know some of this is going to be reiterating some of the stuff we talked about on Friday, but tell us, you know, what the main purpose, which you just alluded to earlier, but what the main purpose of color in terms of the work and the composition of your pieces is, without, again, going through the whole 35-minute interview that we did on Friday. Yeah. But if you could just briefly talk about that.
Sure. Well, when we talked the other day, I explained that all the colors and the figures that I use, or the imagery and the subject matter, comes from an observation of the urban environment and the way how the urban environment is developing, is growing. And a lot of my work is about gentrification and also the consequences of that in terms of social aspects, right? So a lot of the colors that you see in my paintings that are oranges, this very bright blue, is related to things that I have observed in the urban environment that play a role in terms of gentrification. So for example, the blue that I use comes from the IKEA bags, and the way I don't like to call homeless people, I call them public inhabitants of the city, because they live and they occupy these public spaces where they live, right? So the blue comes from IKEA bags that some of them use to carry their belongings. The orange comes from the orange markings that you may have seen on the streets that are related to the utility marking that they do, that the utility sector do to mark the locations where the cabling will go for communications, for gas lines, for different things. But this orange color is particular to a color coding for communications. And a lot of my work talks also about manipulation, about the system, about how the urban planning works in our cities. And so the all the colors and the shapes, of course, are abstracted in my paintings, are not literal. You cannot get that literally when you see the painting, but behind that there's this process, and this process of the observation and of abstraction as well.
So what is unique and fascinating about your work is that there is so much hidden meaning that you have brought to the work that if you didn't know you and if you didn't know the message, you would not necessarily jump to the conclusion of if you were just looking at the work, which brings me to a whole nother line of questions and thoughts that I had, which is about meaning, right? Which is, so I mean, let me take a step back, right? My job as a gallerist is to create an environment, to create a space where people who love art and appreciate art are able to come together in this place with artists who create art and derive their own meaning from artwork, to find something that they love or that imprints upon them a certain sensory or heuristical stimulus that they can then use to buy a piece, right? Art is largely heuristic, and the purchase of art is largely emotional. So what my job essentially is to step the hell out of the way and just say, what do you see in this, buyer? And
Yes.
then, yeah, exactly right. That's exactly right. Would you like to purchase it? Right. So I guess what's weird for me is diving into the work with the artists that make it and understanding where the artist is kind of coming from in the piece. And then being armed with that knowledge, how much harder it is for me to take that full step back and just say, yes, whatever you see is correct, without interjecting necessarily what the artist may have been bringing to the piece, right? Which is this. I'm sure this problem is not unique to me, and has been going on since the time of pre-Renaissance, right? But I'll stay on Carla here, and then I'll jump around. But starting with Carla, to what extent do you want the messaging of the work to be known or shared? And to what extent do you just let the beauty of the piece do the talking and take a step back into the background and allow the piece to emote or convey whatever it is that the buyer may want to get out of it, right? So how much of an active voice are you playing in the discussion around your artwork?
Okay. Well, first of all, I think my position is, and also coming from a person that loves art and I like to consume art myself, and I admire so many artists. And what I really like about art is, or when you look at a piece of art, is that you feel that necessity to spend time with it, right? So that's why I don't like to be to put a statement out there really clear that people can come in, look at my painting, and read the content right away. So what I want to do is just trigger them with some clues, with some with pieces of information that if they are interested, if they feel drawn to the painting or the piece, they would try to engage somehow more. They would do research, they would contact me, or they would read my statement, right? But I don't want to give all the information just chewed up and easily digested visually. So what I want to do is to trigger something, trigger conversations, and just put out there a piece that maybe that tells you something, but you're not really sure what it's talking about, but you feel you feel triggered or encouraged to learn more about it.
Have you had instances where a buyer has approached you, falling in love with a piece, asking the meaning, and then striking an entirely different chord, perhaps in the conversation, and then kind of affecting the process from there? Or, I mean, if you'd rather,
Actually,
not sure.
what has happened is that whenever I talk about my painting, or when people read about the statement, they actually, for them, everything makes more sense, and they feel like, oh, okay, this makes a lot of sense, and it's so cool that you got to think about it, or abstract this in this way, abstract this content in this beautiful way. So I think it's really interesting to let the viewer dig in the painting or feel attracted to it, but then feel that willingness to hear about the content behind the image.
Yeah.
And after they learn about the content, I think they feel even more interested.
Well, that's encouraging. I would hope so, because I think that your work is only enhanced by at least what you've described as some of the meanings of the pieces that we've been talking about. And for those watching at home, if you're curious to know what we're talking about, you can always check it out via our virtual gallery. So it's up and available for you to see. But I'm going to go to Jenny now, again, over in Rhode Island, Jenny Brown, whose work is also up in our Floramatic group show. And I'll present the same question to you. First off, what is, if you can describe with some of the recent work that you've done, or some of the work that you've put up for our Floramatic show, what is some of the meaning is maybe too broad of a word and maybe too esoteric. Where are you emotionally and as an artist, and what are you putting into some of this work? And do you care necessarily to bring that to the attention of buyers, or would you rather people who are admiring your artwork draw their own conclusions and find their own meaning?
So I'm totally fine with people bringing their own thing to the artwork. That doesn't, I'm never offended. A lot of people have said, oh, it just represents beauty to me. And I'm okay with that. If that's, what they see and they feel, I'm totally fine with it. Personally, my statement is pretty ethereal in the way it sort of describes like the big picture of rebirth and reconnection. But for my own personal story, I think if people want to know, and if they see they have that moment of deja vu, that's amazing. Some people like to contact me because they want to know specifically the story behind where one of the materials may have come from, and that's a huge part of the process for me. But I'm okay with people not wanting to know or not caring. I think I feel good because I'm in a place as an artist where I think I really understand why I'm here and what the point is of doing it for me. So if it's always great if you have someone come to you and say, I want to know more about it, or it, like, to use the word trigger, or emotionally touches off something in the viewer and they want to discuss it more, or, they see the material and they think, I used to have a book like that, or I saw a book like that. That's fantastic. But I'm also totally cool with people being like, it's really pretty, I just want to have it in my house, which has happened too. Yeah. And I know some people, that's not the full response they want to have. I'm cool with it. It's good. It's all good.
Well, the word pretty is interesting because it is in the world of fine art, it's relevant and at the same time, entirely overused. But the problem is that because it is still relevant, it makes sense more often than not to just say that this is pretty. You're not able to ascribe full depth of meaning from a viewer's perspective, right? Yeah. Sometimes pretty is perfectly enough, right? For a decision about a piece. So from your perspective as an artist, the word pretty, as we hear it often in the art world, to what extent does that influence the creation of work? Are you driving for pretty, or what does pretty mean in the greater context of the work that you create?
I wouldn't say I'm specifically pushing for pretty, although I'm fine with that being the result. It typically is pretty, although there could be some darker elements to it. You know, the biggest criticism I was told when I was making these and in my education was that they're too pretty, so that there can't be anything there. But I don't really necessarily agree with that. I think that, you know, if you are getting someone to look at your art and they are having some kind of reaction to it, and it might be just that it's pretty or whatever you want to call it, that's amazing that you got someone to take a second look at something. So I'm totally fine with the word being attached to it. It's not exactly what I sit down and say, I want to make something pretty. Right. I want to make something that's emotional or tending to this sort of sense of nostalgia with the old materials. And because of that feeling of nostalgia, it often comes through as pretty, and I'm totally fine with it. But, you know, I don't get offended by it. I think it's a great word and should be used.
Okay, yeah, reasonable. I mean, I appreciate you know.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to pin down.
Yeah, it is definitely.
Where prettiness and beauty fits into the language of fine art. It's a hard thing to pin down. So thanks for at least hearing my question.
Of course. It's a tough one.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot with that one.
No, it's okay.
But thanks. I'll move to Janice, and I want to preface, you know, this question to you, Janice, with the fact that I think that this panel is so uniquely qualified to be talking about this show right now, because there are three clearly different lenses and perspectives on the use of color and composition and theme here among the three artists that we have on the panel. Of the three, Janice, your pieces is at least the series that you've been showing with us, and the piece Floral Days that you have up in show for the Floramatic group show. You use a lot of feminine form and faces, right? In contrast to a lot of this rose gold leaf background and a lot of floral and natural, you know, just various elements throughout the piece. So how does, same question, right? But taking it a little bit further with your work is, in terms of meaning behind the work, where are you headspace wise as an artist as you approach this series of work, and where does feminine form and feminine figures and faces fit in against the natural environment that you portray in the pieces?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of my work, there is a lot of personal meaning behind it, and I don't think I outwardly explain it a lot, because I encourage my work to create emotion, and I want the viewer to kind of view it and then create their own thoughts on what they think is happening, because obviously everybody has all kinds of things going on in their lives. And so when you find a piece of art, you know, that you can connect with without somebody telling you what it is, I feel like that's a lot more meaningful. I think I will give visual cues with the titles. I'll kind of gear towards where my thought process is. I think a lot of the pieces I've done lately with my figures are just kind of emphasize growth and just kind of like freeing your mind of thoughts and stuff like that. But I don't like to pinpoint what it means, because I really want the viewer to kind of look at it and just kind of, I don't know, I want them to captivate them enough to sit there and just ponder it and create their own moments with it. And I think that's pretty important. I think if it's a piece that you connect with, you're more likely to enjoy it for a long period of time.
I agree. So we did have a buyer who loved the piece that you provided for our last show. I believe Lovers Only provided the piece. And it follows along the same style as your piece that you have up in this show, which is Floral Days. Can you tell us a little bit about this piece specifically, Floral Days, with the profile of the female figure to the side of the frame, contrasting against this?
Oh, you froze. Wait, I'm sorry. Your screen froze. I missed your whole last few sentences.
Oh, sorry. Am I back?
Yes.
Okay. Talking specifically about Floral Days, the piece that you have up in the show. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that piece in terms of, I guess, just maybe where you were at when you created it?
This one is just kind of along with the like Free Your Mind kind of series I've been going with, where it's just like just letting go. I think a lot of times we get too focused in our lives on simple things, and it's just one of those moments where you're just like, you want to just open your mind up to everything. And I think that's kind of where I like geared it towards. And when I start a painting, I'll have an idea or how I feel, but as it progresses, it always kind of changes from that initial thought. And it just kind of gears around the same concept though.
Beautiful. I love that. I love the piece.
Thank
One
you.
last question for everyone. I'll jump back to Carla and bring it back around in the group. Can you pinpoint a specific style, artist, or experience in your history as an artist with color and composition that inspired you to change or alter your work or add to your work in any way? Is there a sort of color inspiration, a moment, artist, or period of time that has inspired you?
I would say an artist named Conrad, I'm going to butcher his last name, Sunset or Rosette. I'm going to butcher it, but this is one of his pieces back here. But his playfulness, sometimes he'll just have like three, like the primary colors, but his looseness and his usage of the subtle colors is what I know. I love that. You don't have to use a lot of color. You can just use just a few contrasting colors that can really create a piece. But he's very loose with his work is what I really like about it a lot.
Yes. Jenny, Carla?
For me, I would say probably about 10 years ago, I saw a retrospective of an artist named Mary Delaney at the Yale Museum, who is lived in the 1700s and didn't start her art career until she was in her 70s, and did assemblage, these amazing curiosity cabinets, and just these very vibrant botanical collages. I mean, they are amazing. And I knew a little bit about her, and then I had the opportunity to see the show, and it just was completely immersive. They even recreated the cabinets with all the materials and things. And for me, I think that was very transformative, because there was just all these different things coming from different textures, different colors, and really just a beautiful, simple celebration of botanicals, of flowers, with no even need to even develop a story behind it. And I really appreciated her freedom with that. And I feel it really stuck with me since then. So.
Yeah, beautiful. It's funny sometimes, I think, when I heard you talk about that the world around us, the natural environment provides sometimes enough. You know, we don't need to necessarily add much more to sometimes what is already there.
It's just a simple, beautiful commentary on it.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Carla, what about yourself?
Well, right now, it made me think about this book that I was reading when I was actually thinking about color, because 3 years ago, I wasn't using much color a lot, actually. So because I thought I was thinking that I needed to use color, or if I wanted to use color, I wanted to be very intentional and to really have a reason and a purpose in my painting. So I don't really agree with using color just for the sake of using color. I think it's because, of course, my work is more conceptual driven. But when I was learning about color and trying to find a reason why to use color, also I found this book that is actually related to our show Floramatic, that is The Botany of Desire.
Nice. Michael Pollan, great book.
Yes. So this is actually a plant's eye view of the world. So in this book, they also talk about how color in nature has a reason to be also, and how colors in flowers, for example, the reason why flowers have these beautiful colors is because they need to be pollinized.
Yeah.
So it's an evolution thing. And also it speaks also about why when a guy wants to or is falling for a girl, yeah, right, it comes with flowers, with roses and all this. So why is that? It's like the purpose of basically perpetuating the species somehow in a really basic way.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to think about color in terms of attracting, in terms of evolution. Like, I need to attract someone, I need to provoke something in order to evolve, in order to be perpetuated in life, in the cycle of life. So in terms of the fruits, for example, the color red in an apple, and it's about the history of how species and plants evolve in order for us to consume them.
Mm-hmm.
So nature is really smart in doing that. So I think I was thinking also about that, and the way it affected my work is how can I use colors that in my compositions show as a way of attracting someone between what's happening in the composition itself or with the viewer. So I can also make the viewer's eye go to where I want it to go. In terms of creating interaction between objects or between subject matter that are interacting or fighting with each other or getting into an agreement within the composition. So that's how I think about color in that terms.
Yeah, good, well said. A phrase that came to mind as you were talking was, color is a privilege, right? Use it wisely. I think that we've been, we take the colors in the world around us for granted, not understanding the long history of evolution that it took to present and have the vibrant colors in our natural environment that we have.
Yes, and we were talking the other day about this analogy between the embellishment of the city, the embellishment of the facade of our city. So that's also the reason why the colors in my work are very vibrant and sort of attractive. And there's a lot of contrast as well. That is also another analogy between the contrast of the embellishment of the city and the decay of the human condition. So I like to work with a lot of analogies. It's always connected to the formal aspect, like the formal and the content aspects of my work are always related or playing around.
Yeah, I mean it's evident in the work itself, but so much more so when you are able to color with the perspective that you bring as an artist, and as we kind of again move beyond pretty and start going into why color and what does color mean in our work.
Yeah.
And what does color convey in a piece, and why are we drawn to color, right? So thank you, Janice, Jenny, and Carla,